I'm Shannon Hale. Before I get started, I would like to ask you all a question. And that question is, how many of you have used Flow? Okay, that's more than I was expecting. I think I lost a bet. How many of you feel like you're Flow experts? How many of you opened it once and never opened it again, but still put your hands up the first time? Okay. And the rest of you are kind of like, you're okay, you're good. All right. I got one more question for you. How many of you are Apex Lightning developer-y folks? And how many are admins, no code? Thank you very much. All right. Well, I got a little bit of something for everybody tonight. However, before I get started, I have to say, I'm pretty sure you are all familiar with our forward-looking statements. Please don't make purchasing decisions based on any forward-looking statements that I might and very much will be making during this presentation. And you can go online to, I believe it is salesforce.com securities if you want to read that whole thing. So I think I can pretty much skip this slide because you all know who I am at this point. Thanks, Dan. The big news for Spring 19 for my teams is that we released the new Flow Builder. And if you are all, well, most of you are Flow people, so you were probably familiar with Cloud Flow Designer. And so you probably are remembered that it was a little slow. It was a little bit clunky, some of the interactions. It was very monochrome. I personally could not read the fonts. It was a little hard to tell sometimes what you were looking at, whether it was like whether the element was a screen or an action or what have you. And possibly most importantly, it was built in Flash, and starting in July, it's going to become very, very difficult to use Flash because Adobe is no longer going to support Flash, and the browsers are starting to wind down their support for plugins. And so we came to a recognition that we were going to be losing our platform pretty fast, and we were going to have to build something else. While we were doing that, we were also thinking a little bit about some of the things that people have told us about Cloud Flow Designer. Administrators in particular found it a little bit intimidating, and even developers, people who used it all the time, found it difficult to use sometimes. It was really hard to tell the difference, for example, between that's okay. That'll work. I can do it this way the rest of the time. I don't need the speaker notes. And the other thing is, like, even people who let me just pop it back here for 1 second. Even people who did know how to use Cloud Flow Designer found some of these options on the left-hand side a little bit confusing. Like, who among you knows exactly when to use a fast lookup versus a record lookup? Jeremy? No? No one? Okay. So we figured there was some room for improvement. And rather than talking too much about this, I think I'm just going to jump into the demo. I'm going to give this to Dan for a second while Yeah, that'd be great. Well, I'll give it to you in just a second. Mine. It's like the remote. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about while we were looking at this redesign, we knew we were going to build it from scratch. A lot has changed on Salesforce's platform as far as technology goes since 2010 when we built the Flash plugin. And we really wanted to think a lot about how to make it easier to use, how to make it more approachable, how to make it more efficient. And so in a minute, I will actually tell you what we did. But just to start off with, because I think most of you were Flow friendly, but I'll just go into a little bit of like, what do I do with a Flow? What is Flow? And to give you an example of that, I'm going to talk about the Electron Motors dealer portal. Suppose, if you will, that I am a person at a dealership, and we have a repair request for an Electron Motors dealer car. So I'm going to click into repair request. This is just a classic community page. And in my repair request, I have a UI here and it says, well, click on the damaged part of the vehicle. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to click on the wheels. Now, you might notice that there's some stuff missing on here from the flows that you're familiar with, right? Anyone see something missing? No next button. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to go next. And font's not too tiny. And I broke my demo the day before the demo. Okay, there's actually supposed to be a make and motor, and that's how you can tell it's a live demo, folks. I'll show you the other version in a second. I can pick the insurance company. Let's say it's Bellic. I can say I have a few things that I want to run here, and I will go next. I have a pretty good idea as to why that broke, but anyway. So an hour and a half ago, I worked on this demo and I got it all right, and someone in the meantime went in and replaced it with a different flow just to mess me up. I suspect Alex Edelstein. Anyway, when I'm done, when I'm finished, I am just going to, let's just go to the flow and talk about the flow. So in Spring 19, we launched Flow Builder, and we turned it on by default for everybody. So we don't actually have to do anything special to open your flows in Flow Builder. This is just like the regular flows page. And we'll just click into the flow and open it. And it automatically opens in the new Flow Builder. There is a way to turn this off, and I will tell you later how to do that, or how to basically open your Cloud Flow Designer flows in Flow and your Flow Builder flows in Flow Builder. So some of the things we wanted to talk about with Flow Builder, I talked about making it easier, right? I talked about some of the challenges with Cloud Flow Designer around the monochrome palette. Well, as you can see, it's definitely not monochrome. We got some orange in there. It's my favorite right now. So we really did a lot of work on the visual design. We made the lines cleaner. We made the text larger. We made it clearer what you're looking at. We used some icons and different colors so you could really easily tell what you're looking at the screen, whether it's a screen or a data action or actions or your data logic. We simplified the toolbox. So instead of now just trying to figure out whether you should be using a fast lookup or a record lookup, you can just use get records. And as you configure get records, it tells you exactly, like, the options that you pick will determine whether it uses a fast lookup or a regular recup lookup behind the scenes. So you don't have to know that anymore. That was kind of a big deal. The other thing you'll notice is that it's pretty familiar. If you're familiar with Lightning App Builder, if you're familiar with other tools on Salesforce, it looks and feels a lot like Lightning App Builder, right? We have your palette of components on the left-hand side. We have your screen properties on the right-hand side. We have your canvas in the middle. You might notice a little bit of raw HTML up there. One thing that we did not get in time for Spring 19, I have a few things on that list, but one of them was the rich text editor and the rich text display. And so at the moment when you have rich text, because we built this flow in Cloud Flow Designer, it's showing the raw HTML markup. I promise that's going to be fixed in like summer, so just a couple more months. In the meantime, a lot of you are developers and you can just modify the markup, or I'll tell you the other secret way of modifying it afterwards. So if you looked at Cloud Flow Designer, you might notice that we have a lot of new components here on the left-hand side. We have a file upload component, and we have slider, and we have a few other things. In summer 18, we introduced the ability to add custom Lightning components, custom screen components to flows. And in winter 19, we actually included a whole bunch of new components like toggle and slider. But in Cloud Flow Designer, they were all buried under extensions, Apex, and so you might not have even seen them. There's a dependent pick list under there. So we raised them up above the line to say, hey, these are really standard components, you can use them. However, you can in fact use also custom Lightning components. In this particular screen, this was the screen with the car. And you'll notice it doesn't look anything like that because we can't show a preview just at the moment. But this is actually the car problem picker. So let's just, because it wouldn't be a developer for a presentation if I didn't bring some code into it, right? So let's just briefly take a look at the developer console. So if you write your Lightning components and you implement the Lightning available for flow screens interface, then your screen components will show up in Flow Builder in the left-hand side, and you can drag them on the screen. And so in this case, you can see our component itself actually contains a couple of divs that actually have background images set to look like the car. Our controller is pretty simple. It's just basically handling mouse over it, put like a little haze on the wheels. And when we click on it, we're actually using the standard Lightning events to navigate to another page. And we have something called a component for navigate flow, and you just navigate next, and it does what's next. So that way we can actually replace some of those buttons. I mean, forward and next and previous are really great options to have for a lot of wizards, but sometimes you want to do something a little fancier. And so this is an option for that. And I'm also going to talk more about navigating in a minute. One sec. Oops, sorry, Don. So we talked about more components. The other thing I wanted to talk about with Flow Builder is actions. How many of you have used invocable actions in your flows? Not bad. So we changed the way the actions get rendered. It used to just be this it could get really long. In the org where I'm doing this demo, there's quite a sizable chunk of custom actions because it's got 7 or 8 demos in it. So we kind of limited the box to just core actions, and when you configure the action, drag the action on the page, then you get to choose which action you've got. So one of the things we like to do with actions is Apex actions. Apex invocable actions are something that we've had in... How many of you use Process Builder? And how many of you use invocable actions in Process Builder? Same people who use invocable actions generally. Okay, thanks. So what you can do is basically create the action in Apex. It's an Apex class. It's got a decorator for invocable actions. Let's just jump over there. This one is for cloning equip doc. So by declaring it an invocable method, you can then also indicate which kind of variables you're passing in. And in this case, we're passing in a file name and the name of the copy. And so what we can do when this executes is we basically are going off in the background, executing some Apex. The Apex is creating a copy of equip document and is putting it in a new folder. And then it comes back. So what happens when you actually go to configure that action is the variables that you set up as invocable variables will show up on the input variables, and also you can return values from your invocable action and then use them elsewhere in your flow. So some other places where you could use this, you could call it to an external service. This one goes to Quip. We've got some that go to Dropbox, where you want to send messages to Slack. Lots of things that can be done once you get into Apex land. The other kind of action that we have, who among you have heard of local actions? Nobody? Local actions are a way to write an action that actually is a Lightning component and executes JavaScript. And so this example here, it's not the one I meant to open. I meant to open, this is where it gets a little complicated because I need 2 fingers to pan this unless I use the button. There we go. So here I have a core action that I created called show toast. And if you're familiar with Lightning, the Lightning events that we have access to, we can call show toast at the end of a sequence of things to pop up the little toast message at the top, right? And you can do a success message or an error message. In this case, this is a very simple custom local action called show toast. We can look at the code for it. The component simply implements Lightning available for flow actions as opposed to screens. And we indicate the attributes that we want to pass in. So in this case, we're passing in the message, and we're also passing in the type. Those of you who are familiar with Toast know there's a bunch of other things you can put in there, but this is a very simple example. And then in the controller, all it's doing is it's getting the arguments, and then it's calling helper show toast with type and message. And so what this does is, if we look at our full flow here, the flow that I tried to show earlier, it has a screen, it lets you pick the car, it allows you to choose which repairs you want to do on the car. It got the available repairs here. We'll look at that in just a second. It created a quip document, moved it to a folder, and then it went through a loop for all of the repair requests that we had. And it created a repair request record and a repair procedure record, and it sent a chatter message to Eric Ware, who's the guy who's in charge of repair requests, letting him know that a new repair request came in. If something had failed, it would have come out here, fault to the finish screen, a finish screen. And then once it was finished with the loop, after the last item, it would show the toast message, and then it would go to a finish screen. So why don't we actually run this in debug mode? Who's used the debugger? Hey, lots of fans of the debugger. We don't have to do anything fancy here. So here we are clicking on the damaged part of the vehicle. That's what I was expecting. And it shows on the right-hand side the details of what you've been doing. So it's saying, okay, well, you picked this thing, you selected the navigation button next. I went off and I did a fast lookup, and I got the repair types. I'm going to choose a manufacturer, which is Electron. And note that now that I've chosen the manufacturer, I'm also getting the model. This is actually a dependent pick list on the repair request object. And so depending on what you pick in the master, it sets the different variables in the child. And in the flow component, this standard flow component that we added in Winter 19 basically hides the second drop down until you pick the first one, and then you pick the second one, and we're going to pick the insurance company. This insurance company and the list here are actually custom components that we built with a data table. I'll tell you in a few minutes how you can get unmanaged package versions of those. So we're going to say we're going to do a brake replacement, and we have a slider at the bottom that's also a standard component. Let's click next. That's where it's going off, creating the quip document, doing some other stuff in the background. So once we're finished, it's telling us that we had a few of these things, and we can actually click on Show Repair Request, which takes us to another thing, which is a local action, which actually takes us to the detail record for the repair request. So a nice way to finish your flow other than just sort of going, you're done, right? Just ignore that. I'm a little afraid to try clicking present again, so I think I'm just going to do it that way if that's okay. So Flow Builder is generally available in Spring 19. It's available in Lightning Experience and Salesforce Classic. Your existing flows behavior and runtime experience doesn't change, because basically Cloud Flow Designer and Flow Builder are creating exactly the same engine metadata in the background. So when you open Cloudflow in Cloudflow Designer Flow version in Flow Builder, the save button is disabled and you have to save it as a new version. And there's actually a pretty good reason for that, which is largely if something did happen that was different, you want to be able to go back to the other version in Cloudflow Designer. That's an option for you. And by default, we only show the Cloudflow Designer Flow Builder. But you can, in fact, turn on Cloudflow Designer again if you find that some of the functionality that we haven't got to, which I think is on the next slide or 2 slides down, is like something you really desperately need in order to get your work done. We make that possible. So you can just deselect disable access to Cloudflow Designer. I have 2 pro tips for you, because people were yelling at me about this, so I'm going to tell you these 2 tips. Number 1, we do not have drag to select multiple items and then move them, but you can in fact hold the shift key down and click on the items to select multiple items. It's not perfect. We're working on marquee selection. There's a few things that we just didn't get to. We worked on this for 18 months and browsers are already starting to make it kind of difficult to use Flash. And so we figured we should get it out now and get people using it, and then we'll finish up the last little bit. So the last little bit is coming. The other thing, lots of people complaining about having to click that little button. But you don't actually have to click that little button. If you hold down the space key while you click and drag the canvas, you can do it without actually hitting the button. So that's, if you're not holding a microphone, yes. Well, if I had a mouse, it would be okay, but unfortunately I'm using a trackpad, which means it's like 3 keys, so it's a little bit problematic. So those of you who have already used Flow Builder are probably really eagerly waiting for this slide. Here is our forward-looking statement of the evening, folks. Top requested roadmap items for Flow Builder. All of these are on Idea Exchange if you would like to go and add your 2 cents. I'm all over it. The first one, copy and paste. I feel like I should be doing like a Family Feud thing here. The number 1 is copy and paste and undo, redo, and the rich text editor and find in Canvas, which is really, really useful if you have more than like 6 things in your canvas, are all things that we are in progress and are working on summer 2018. I have a screenshot of finding Canvas on my phone. If you really don't believe me, I can show you afterwards. Marquee selection, and some people have been talking about the readability of the connectors with the curvy lines. Those are things that we're looking at probably for winter 20, just based on time. And then I have a number of other things which we're working on that I can't really tell you about just yet. More information on Flow Builder. You're going to share this. Daniel, if I send you a PDF, you'll show the slides on the YouTube video as well. Yeah. Well, if I do it in a PDF, you should be able to. So I'll do that. Otherwise, they're all exactly by title. So if you are a Cloudflow Designer user and you're just switching over to Flow Builder, if you read no other piece of documentation, please read Flow Builder versus Cloudflow Designer, because it will answer 90% of your questions. It tells you what we renamed things, because it's and the other big one is that S-object is now called record. If you're looking for that one, that's one I get a lot. If you're familiar with the site Unofficial SF, it used to be called lightningflow.net. Now it's Unofficial Salesforce, Unofficial SF. I don't know anything about this site, and I absolutely did not write this article. The top 10 things you want to know about the new Flow Builder is a really good list of basically what I'm talking about in this presentation. Trailhead. All existing trails are up to date with Flow Builder content, and automate your business processes with Lightning Flow now points to all of the Lightning Flow content. So if you ever did that trail before, you might want to redo it. Additionally, cover your ears, Karen. We have all new content coming out in March. The little doc elves have been super, super busy and have like an entire new trail, new projects, all the things on like what variables are if you're an admin and you've been kind of afraid of Flow Builder. All that stuff is coming in March. Safe harbor. getting started with the new flow builder. Salesforce admins, we did this post a month or so ago, 2 hours of tutorial content on using flow builder and flows in general. And then if you have any suggestions, concerns, questions, what have you, the Salesforce workflow automation group in the Trailblazer community, we're haunting that and trying to get on the questions pretty quickly, so we're all over that. So we actually did a couple of other things for Spring 19 that I also wanted to mention. Dennis, where are you? In the back? Flow templates, flow and process templates. One of the biggest things we hear a lot of the time is it's a blank canvas and I don't know where to start. And so flow templates are a way for ISVs and for Salesforce to provide a starter template. You know, if you, anyone, ISVs here? One? Okay. You know, if you're an ISV and you create a flow in a managed package, then basically there's no way for your customers to do anything with that flow. And that tends to not be very useful. And so what flow templates allow you to do is create the flow as a template, and then the customer can then basically open that template as a new document and can modify it and make tweaks to it as they need to. We're actually using this in a lot of places in Salesforce for other teams now. It'll start rolling out to the ISV. Well, it's available now, but it's not a very useful, it's not easy to find right now. You basically have to open the template and save it as something else. But starting in summer, it will actually prompt you to choose your template when you create your new flow. We'll be doing a bunch of new stuff. So that will be a good experience. The other thing that's pretty interesting, we have lots of people who have talked about wanting to be able to send error messages to different people or to do other things with error messages. Platform events are a way that you can actually use Process Builder to trigger a flow or other stuff based on a platform event. Starting in Spring 19, we added 2 standard platform events which can be used in Process Builder. Up till now, it's only been custom. So we have the batch Apex error event and the platform status alert event. Platform status alert event is pretty much restricted to next best action at the moment. Batch Apex, as you might expect, comes from batch Apex. But I think as you see us moving forward, you're going to see a lot more different types of exceptions that you'll be able to capture the platform events and actually do stuff with them. So this is nice because you can basically say, hey, when this event occurs, create an email and send it to Daniel, preferably at 4 o'clock in the morning. And that is about all I have. And I will answer questions. And I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeremy.
I was really excited to see the debug. And since flows run in user context, is there a way that I can, as an administrator, log in as that user and then run the flow in the debug or something along those lines?
Not at the moment, because you pretty much have to be in the flow builder to run it. And you cannot do that unless your end user also happens to have view all data and manage flows, which you probably don't want to give your end user. So not at the moment. We are doing a lot of stuff about potentially more granular permissions for things. And that is a really good use case that I had not thought of, and I will take back as food for thought as we move forward with that, because that's a good one.
Other questions?
More questions?
So actually, I had a comment and a question. The comment is, when you actually showed the local action function, I realized I have used that before, and hiding somewhere in a Salesforce GitHub repository are a whole set of really useful local actions. And yeah, you should make that available. I stole a bunch of them, especially the one that refreshed the current page when a flow finished and updated the fields on the page, the detail record fields that had been changed. I'll ask the other question while you're looking for it. Is there a way of catching an error during a save that does not result in an email being sent to anyone? I want to, just like in Apex, I'd like to be able to catch an error when a record fails to save properly because of, let's say, a validation error. And I want to just handle it right there. I don't want an email to go to me for just basically a kind of known error condition.
So I don't have the answer to that. Jason Teller is the product manager for like the Flow engine, who handles a lot of the sort of under the covers stuff. And I know he is doing a lot of work right now on better error messaging, better error stuff in general. And I will ask him next time, sorry. So 2 things, I should call it super quick. The unofficial SF site under Flow has a whole bunch of really great content, blog posts by various people on doing things like using platform events and how to launch flows from buttons, and has videos and demos. And one of the things that it links to is the Lightning Flow Components GitHub repository for my boss, Alex. And so he has a whole set of Flow action components, including navigate to SObject, navigate to related list, show toast. In fact, that show toast message I used was exactly that one. So you can write your own, or you can go check it out on GitHub. It is AlexEd1. There's a link from the unofficial Flow plays. It's probably easier to remember unofficial SF and go from there than it is to try and remember the URL. But you know, some of them are available in packages on App Exchange from Salesforce Labs, and the rest are here if you're a developer and you want to sort of get into the feel of how to build your own. This is a great place to do it. And you can extend it and make it so you can do more than just success and fail and add other things. No questions? Don?
Thanks, Shannon. Can I assume, and can you reveal that under the hood, this is now built natively on the platform like the app builder, that this is built with Lightning Web Components?
That is something that is on my list of things to talk about that I forgot to mention. Yes, one of the reasons why it is so fast is that Flow Builder was actually built on Lightning Web Components. The Flow standard, like the Flow runtime components, are still old school, but we are in fact in the process of migrating them all. And sometime within the next couple of releases, definitely not summer, because we're almost finished with development for summer. We will also support Lightning Web Components in your Flow, like in the Flow screen, so you can use them there as well.
Cool, thanks.
We're just like a release behind. And person whose name I can't read. Hi, Peter.
Here.
One of the rumors I'd heard for years was that Salesforce was working on some grand unified flow and process builder tool that was going to bring them together and do all things. And so this is definitely just flow, but was there any truth to that, or I should get that out of my mind completely?
I have no comment at this time. No, I'm kidding. We have actually talked about it. I mean, the big difference, processes are flows, right? They're flows under the cover. Processes can call flows. At the end of the day, the big difference between there's 2 big differences between Process Builder and Flow Builder. One is that processes can actually have a trigger to actually know when to call it, whereas flows are waiting for a trigger from someone else. And Process Builder is somewhat more restrictive in what it allows you to do. It's definitely not as flexible, but in the end, it still builds a flow. So we are talking about a lot of different ways to make flows easier to build. And we are talking about, does it make sense to have two tools? Should we? Woo. Can we make it restrictive enough that people can actually learn to build logic? Because our process builder is definitely a different tier of users. So it's a valid rumor. It's something we talk about, and then we talk about something else, and we come back and we talk about something else. Every iteration that we're doing on Flow Builder, as we're thinking about how to make it easier to use, brings us closer to a possibility of doing that, but I think it's still a ways out. Thank you. Oh, that was you. I thought it was me wiggling the mic. I was like, whoa. Any more questions? Jeremy, got another one. Here, let me.
If I was going to do something, if there was something that I could do purely in Apex, but I could also do it in in Flow. One of the things I'm trying to understand is how different is the performance of those two things?
That is a really good question for Jason Teller, and I don't know.
And how did you say I should reach out to Jason?
You should probably send me an email, and I'll forward it to him because he's not on Twitter. Unlike me. I'm on Twitter. You can just mention Shannon Sands. I'm out there all over the place. Any more questions? We're still good on time, right?
So this will be a quick question. It was mentioned earlier about process builder runs in system mode and flows that launch from a screen at least run in user mode as far as CRUD and field level access, etc. Any thought to allowing a screen flow to run in system mode so you can do back-end things?
Yeah, that's one of those things that we've been talking about as we've talked about the whole access thing. One of the things that I was a little surprised, so those of you who did know about me before the whole Shannon Hale theme song played earlier, I was a product manager on the platform for a number of years, and I was responsible for page layouts and formulas and a bunch of other things. And so I've been around for quite a while. And all of those things, when you're building them, you are in essentially a system mode, right, where you have access to all the objects, even if you don't actually have access to the CRUD. And I was a little surprised to find out that Flow, actually, you have to have CRUD for the object in order to build with it. And I thought, does not compute. So we're talking a lot about stuff like that. Right now, honestly, our biggest priority is finishing the parity stuff that we need to finish before Flash dies. And then we're looking at a whole bunch of new stuff, but we've been putting a lot of resources on Flow to sort of build it out. So that's definitely one thing that we've been talking about. Any more questions? Okay, I have one more thing because actually someone asked me earlier, and I'm spacing out on who, which is the whole Lightning Flow, Process Builder, Flow Builder. Was that you, Mary? Okay. My doppelganger, Mary Scotton. Lightning Flow is just because it's kind of confusing, especially if you look at the marketing material. Sorry, Derry. Lightning Flow is basically a suite of tools. So Flow Builder is one of those tools, and it's not Lightning Flow Builder, it's just Flow Builder. It runs in Salesforce Classic and in Lightning. Process Builder is one of those tools in Lightning Flow. Who's still with me? Whose eyes just kind of glazed over a few minutes ago? Okay. And the Flow Engine is part of Lightning Flow. So we have a few things that all sort of fall under process automation. And that is how that split works out. Mary has another question. Sorry, last question. Mary is on the admin evangelism team at Salesforce.
My question is, I saw you use an Aura component, a Lightning component based on Aura in your Flow. Can you use a Lightning Web component, which I hear is very snazzy? Can you use those in Flow?
You will probably be able to starting winter.
Thank you. I can't wait. Is there a workaround now? Could I wrap a flow in another
You
component,
can't-
in another component, in another component?
Not at the moment,
Thank
because
you.
our runtime just doesn't support it.
Just asking.
That might possibly work as of. I wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't do it. Thanks.
I wouldn't do it. Hang in there. We'll get there soon. Last call for questions. So you're just setting me up for failure here then? Oh, wait. Dennis, we got one in the back row.
Is there
Save me.
any difference between Lightning and Classic if you're want to use this tool?
So there is no difference in using the tool. However, if you are using, we talked about the screen components. If you are using, so there's a setting in the process automation tools that says enable flows to run in Lightning runtime. If you want to use the Lightning components, then you have to enable the Lightning runtime. You don't actually have to have Lightning running to run it in the Lightning runtime, but some of your things like the local actions, which are depending on the Aura or the Lightning code to do like navigate to a different page or show event or stuff, that requires the Lightning runtime. So, but as far as like building the tool goes, there's no difference. You just have to be careful about which components you're using. But of course, all of you are in Lightning at this point, right? All right, Daniel had one that he was going to stump me with.
Okay, so I was using flows in the context of next best action.
Uh-huh.
And normally when you launch a flow and you want to pass in some parameters, you can do through the URL, or if you're in the context of a record, you can get the record ID.
Mm-hmm.
But in next best action, you've got like two record IDs. You've got the case or the opportunity that the next best action is recommending an action for.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the recommendation that you click on also, which has an ID. And I can't figure out how to get that second. So I'm wondering, like, have you heard anything about this challenge? So currently the workaround is to create a flow, a screen flow for every actions, and then you kind of know your context because you are that action, so you know who called you. But I'm wondering, to be more dynamic, is there any way to pass in like two different record contexts into a flow like that?
So at the moment, this is actually something we've been talking about quite a bit because we don't really have the way to pass in more than one variable. A lot of ISVs in particular have been asking for the ability to pass in things so that you don't basically just have to like query everything. Right now, the only reason that the record ID from the context that you're in works is because we did that work to support quick actions. And we don't have the ability to also pass in that other thing. But if you email me that, and you have my email address, I will talk to Marwan about it and find out if there's a better solution.
Thank you. That was worth having you come here just for the offer to answer the email.
I'll send you the bill later. Any more questions? We all good? I'm going to be around for a bit. Feel free to grab me and ask any questions that you're too shy to stand up and ask in front of everybody else, and I'll try to answer them. All right, thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.